Chapter 8. Let us turn briefly to the Egyptian priestly titles and their functions. In late period Egypt, it seems that the rules of purity were imposed upon the population at large, not only the serving priests and ascetics. Therefore, the Romanized Hermetic description of Egypt as the Templum Totius Mundi, the temple of the whole world, is to a certain extent justified. Cultic purification is a necessary condition for entering the house of the god, Hut Neta, located in the centre of the divine household, Per Neta, and becoming the god's prophet, the royal deputy and deified performer of sacramental union. In the temple liturgy, the name of the deity is uttered loudly, and then followed by the self-presentation of the entering priest. The purified priests play the role of both the king and the gods themselves, thus the temple liturgy is turned into a type of theurgy. But neither the priests nor the animated cult images are the gods as they are in their transcendent metaphysical realm. Rather, they serve as vehicles for the divine irradiation, communication, and contextual presence. In the temple liturgy, the self-presentation consists mainly of affirmations of the type, I am the god such and such, usually a divine intermediary such as Thoth, Shu, Horus, but also Isis and Nephthys, occasionally preceded by the affirmation that the entering priest is indeed pure. The Egyptian priests are designated as Hemu Neta, servants of the god, like the servants of household staff. As Ronald Williams remarks, the title Hemu Neta was applied to a grade of temple priest and was rendered by the Greek term prophetes, the interpreter of the divine will. More exactly, the higher priests of the Egyptian temple were divided into the categories of Hem Neta, prophet, and Uab, priest, the pure one. Consequently, the term prophetes denoted a certain particular liturgical function, and also served as a designation of the higher priestly class, Hiereus, itself divided into 5 subcategories. According to John G., during the daily temple liturgy, the officiant pronounces 2 statements of identity. While taking the incense burner, he says, I am a priest and I am pure. And during the ritual of undoing the white cloth, he says, I am a prophet. It is the king who has commanded me to see the god. The title, Hem Neta, is conventionally expressed in Greek as prophetes and Uab as Hiereus. The statements, Inc Uab, I am a priest, and Inc Hem Neta, I am a prophet, indicate the 2 main levels of the temple hierarchy. All priests belonged to the Uab category because they were the purified ones, but some of them were selected or appointed as the prophets, the spokesmen of the gods. As Christian Zevi Koch observes, quoting Gods and Men in Egypt 3000 BCE to 395 CE, 2004, page 103, the clergy of Amun had a first prophet who was at the summit of the hierarchy, as well as a second, third, and fourth prophet, each the sole holder of his rank, and then a mass of undifferentiated prophets. In principle, only the first prophet had access to the Holy of Holies, while the others, accompanied by lector priests or ritualists whose specialty was reading the papyrus rolls, stopped at the Hall of Offerings. All priests were simply officially appointed substitutes for the pharaoh, or rather, vehicles and instruments that reactivated his delegated powers, like the so-called Ushabti figures, which enabled the deceased Egyptian to participate in the obligatory liturgical work in the afterlife, instead of otherwise missing it. In this respect, the pharaoh is regarded as virtually the sole and omnipresent priest of the state. He is the chief mystagogue of his administrative apparatus, and the singular mystic, contemplating, in principle or in fact, the radiant face of his divine patron father. And why? because the pharaoh symbolizes and represents humanity as a whole. Quoting Jan Assmann from his book Semiosis and Interpretation in Ancient Egyptian Ritual, 1992, page 92, the king is the sole terrestrial being qualified to communicate with the gods, because the sacred communication cannot take place between a god and a merely human being, but only between God and God. The pharaoh, as the titulary son of Ra, The pharaoh, as the titulary son of Ra, is able to delegate his power of cultic communication to the temple staff. In such circumstances, all constitutive elements of the telestic performance must be symbolic, since everything in the sacred game becomes a kind of hieroglyph. According to Jan Assmann, it is in the role of the king that the priest is able to assume the role of a god. He plays the god because a cultic spell is divine utterance. The cultic scene, therefore, implies 3 levels of symbolization. 1. A priest confronting a statue. 2. A king confronting a god. 3. A god, whose role is played by the king represented by the priest, conversing with another god. This tripartite system of religious symbolization is reminiscent of Greek mystery religions, which are reported to imply the same 3 kinds of symbolic expression. 1. Dromenon, what is to be done, or action. 2. Dei knoumenon, what is to be shown, representation. And 3. Legomenon, what is to be said, language. To be initiated into royal service and be offered the status of cultic substitute for the son of Ra means to acquire the position and rank of prophet in the sense of the Greco-Egyptian prophetes. Only by being initiated as the servant of God, Hem Netta, can one enter into the temple as the living servant of Ra, Hem Ankh en Ra, in order to see all forms of the god and all secret things. The purpose of this initiation, Bez, constitutes in seeing the deity, that is, in gazing at the image, Sekem, Tut, of the god. The watcher, like the Platonic Theoros, is to be united with the god's Ba, or manifestation, godlike radiance, in the tremendous contemplation of the divine truth and beauty. Likewise in Neoplatonism, the dialectical and telestic becoming, like the divine, homoiousin, leads to unification, he aretos henosis, with the god, through the contemplation of his animated statue, for the telestic art makes the statues in the here below, tatida agalmata, to be like the gods by means of symbols and mysterious theurgic tokens. Quoting Proclus, Dia tenon symbolon kai aporeton sunthamaton. For Proclus, the true divine madness is to be equated with, or located in, the one of the soul, the hnetic summit of one's psychic and noetic topography, by means of which the theurgist is united with the one, through the divine manii, be it prophetic madness according to truth, erotic madness according to beauty, or poetical madness according to divine symmetry. The philosopher's soul is linked to the gods, and this form of life is that of the ultimate mystical experience of the ultimate unification. The threshold of the Holy of Holies in the Egyptian temple must be equated with that of the Hyper-Urianios topos in Plato's Phaedrus. Though, strictly speaking, the dark inner sanctuary represents the symbolic mound of noetic creation in the darkness of Nun. The prophetic path leading to liturgic and theurgic unification, later romanticized as a democratic and personal unio mystica, is closed for ordinary mortals, but open for the living pharaoh and his initiates, both the vindicated and blessed dead, Ma Keru, and purified living priests, the formal cultic prototypes of the Platonic philosophers and mystics. Lanny Bell states, the wooden doors of the sanctuary shrine... Let me try that again. Lanny Bell states, the wooden doors of the sanctuary shrine, which enclosed the divine image, were called the doors of heaven. At their opening, ritual participants were projected into the realm of the divine. Here in the temple's interior, Henu, all the energy of the divine Bao that animates the hieratic statues, reliefs, and the entire temple is concentrated. Some 19th century scholars may be wrong in imagining the prophet, first of all the Jewish political moralist and inspired demagogue, as an exceptional individual and a religious genius. That is, an extraordinary personality who has miraculous inner experiences. In most cases, however, ancient prophethood is more like a job appointment, either by the king or by the patron deity, for the official temple ritual performance and the royal court service. Be that as it may, the prophet, although de jure only a humble servant, had an opportunity, or rather a job requirement, to visit the divine house and see its amazing beauties, or even encounter and glimpse the face of the god himself.